The exact moment I saw the familiar silver Honda Civic parked crookedly outside her house at 2 a.m., I didn't cry, scream, or break down like I always thought I would in my worst nightmares. Instead, a cold, numbing electric shock ran all the way down my spine, traveling slowly from the base of my neck to my fingertips, signaling with absolute clarity that the exhausting game of pretending was finally over, and my real, painful life was just beginning. I reached out with a trembling hand to turn off my headlights, plunging myself into darkness, and sat in the suffocating silence of my car, listening intently to the engine tick rhythmically as it slowly cooled down in the damp night air. For months, I had been gaslighting myself, telling myself over and over that I was paranoid, that I was crazy, and that I was reading too much into innocent situations because of my own deep-seated insecurities and fear of abandonment. But looking at that car, sitting undeniably in that driveway under the flickering yellow street lamp, the thick fog of denial in my brain finally lifted, blowing away like smoke and leaving behind a sharp, jagged reality that cut me to the bone. The truth has a funny, cruel way of making you feel strangely calm and detached right before it completely destroys the world you built, like the eerily quiet eye of a hurricane passing over your house. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned bone white, not out of sudden anger, but in a desperate, primal attempt to anchor myself to reality before I floated away into the abyss of panic opening up beneath me. 2 entire years of my life flashed before my eyes, not as a romantic movie montage with soft lighting, but as a forensic evidence board connecting a series of glaring red flags I had willfully ignored to keep the peace. Jerome was the kind of guy everyone in our circle loved, the kind of charismatic man who held doors open for strangers, charmed waiters, and always remembered your mother's birthday without being reminded by a calendar notification. He felt safe, he felt steady like a rock in a chaotic world, and he was supposed to be mine, the one person I could count on when everything else fell apart, the person who was supposed to protect me from pain, not cause it. But deep down, in the places we don't like to look, I knew there was always a shadow lurking in the corners of our relationship, a lingering, unexorcised ghost from the past named Brianna. She was his high school sweetheart, the legendary one who got away, the golden girl of his memories, and the person he constantly claimed he was just friends with, despite their late-night texts and inside jokes. I shifted the gear into reverse with trembling hands, backing the car away slowly to avoid making a single sound that might alert them, and drove away into the night without ever confronting them, choosing silence over a scene. I didn't need a dramatic confrontation, a screaming match on the front lawn, or a tearful confession to know exactly what shattered trust and betrayal looked like up close. The silhouette of his car was enough. Driving home that night, the city looked completely different through my windshield, alien and sharp, as if the protective, soft layer of love that usually colored my vision had been violently peeled away from my eyes. The streetlights looked harsh and accusing. The familiar storefronts seemed like hollow sets on a stage, and every happy couple I saw walking on the sidewalk felt like a personal mockery of my misery. I thought about the romantic dinner we were supposed to have the next night, our 2-year anniversary dinner at that expensive Italian place downtown with the candlelit tables and the vintage wine list. I thought about the emerald green silk dress hanging perfectly in my closet, the one I had saved for months for this specific special occasion, imagining the look on his face when he saw me in it. It felt ridiculous and mocking now, hanging there like a costume for a play that had been canceled without anyone telling the lead actress, a ghost of a future that would never happen. When I finally got back to our quiet apartment, the silence was deafening, pressing against my ears like physical weight, heavy with the secrets that lived within these walls. I walked slowly into the bedroom, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor, and looked at his side of the bed, the pillow still indented from his head where he had slept the night before. It still smelled like his cedarwood shampoo, a complex scent of wood and citrus that used to comfort me and make me feel safe, but now it made my stomach turn with a violent wave of nausea. I didn't sleep a single minute that night. I just lay there stiffly, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows of passing cars move across the plaster like ghosts, waiting for the sun to rise and bring the inevitable end. Every time a car passed outside, my heart leaped, wondering if it was him coming home to lie to me, or if he was staying there with her until dawn. The next morning, the screen of my phone lit up with a text from him at 8:03 a.m., acting as if absolutely nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't ended while he slept. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait for tonight," the message read, accompanied by a heart emoji that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Reading those deceitful words on the bright screen felt like a physical slap across the face, stinging and humiliating, realizing he could type beautiful while lying next to someone else. How could someone lie so casually, with such practiced ease, before they have even had their morning coffee or brushed their teeth, compartmentalizing their betrayal so effortlessly. I decided right then and there to go through with the dinner, not to celebrate our love, but to witness the final performance of a liar, to study him like a specimen under a microscope. I wanted to see if he could look me in the eye, smile that winning smile, and lie to my face one last time before I dropped the curtain on his act. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, choosing a secluded table in the corner where I could watch the door without being seen immediately, positioning myself like a predator waiting for prey. The waiter poured ice water into my glass, the sound of the ice cracking in the silence echoing the fracture in my own chest, a tiny sound of destruction amidst the ambient jazz. I studied the intricate floral pattern on the white tablecloth, tracing the design with my finger over and over until my vision blurred with unshed tears, trying to memorize the texture of this moment. Jerome walked in 10 minutes late, looking flustered and devastatingly handsome in the navy blue suit that I used to love seeing him wear, the one I bought him for his promotion. He scanned the room for me, his face a mask of casual lateness, hiding the secrets that must have been weighing on his soul, if he even had one. He leaned in to kiss my cheek, and I smelled her floral perfume clinging to his collar, faint to anyone else, but undeniable to me, a sickeningly sweet scent of betrayal mixed with the street air. "Sorry I'm late," he said, flashing that charming, boyish smile that used to melt my knees and make me forgive him for anything. Traffic was an absolute nightmare coming from the office. I smiled back at him, a tight, thin smile that didn't reach my eyes, masking the storm raging beneath my skin, channeling every ounce of strength I had to not scream. "It's okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady and calm, sounding like a stranger's voice coming from my throat. "I have plenty of time. We have all the time in the world." We ordered a bottle of expensive red wine, a vintage he claimed to love but knew nothing about, and we played the part of the happy, successful couple for the benefit of the room. But every single time his phone buzzed on the table, vibrating against the wood, I saw his eyes dart anxiously toward it before flicking back to me, a microscopic tell of his guilt. He wasn't really there with me. His body was occupying the chair, wearing the suit, eating the food, but his mind was back in that driveway, back with her. "Is everything okay?" I asked, cutting into my steak with surgical precision, the knife sliding through the meat, watching his reaction closely. "Yeah, just work stuff," he lied smoothly, taking a large, nervous sip of wine to hide his expression. My boss is being incredibly demanding about the new project timeline. I put my fork down slowly, the metal clinking loudly against the fine china, a sharp sound that seemed to stop time and cut through the chatter of the restaurant. "Jerome," I said, and the sudden drop in the tone of my voice made him freeze mid-chew, his instincts finally alerting him to the danger. He looked up at me, a flicker of genuine fear crossing his eyes for the first time that evening, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "I drove by Brianna's house last night around 2 a.m., I said, the words coming out soft but heavy, like stones dropping into deep water, creating ripples that would drown us both. The color drained from his face instantly, leaving him looking pale, exposed, and smaller than I had ever seen him, stripped of his charm and confidence. He opened his mouth to speak, to deny, to spin another elaborate story about helping her with an emergency, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Don't," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly with the effort of holding back tears. "Just don't insult my intelligence anymore. I deserve that much respect, at least now." The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating, filled with the ambient noise of other people's happiness and clinking glasses, amplifying our tragedy. I watched him crumble, watched the carefully constructed facade of the good guy dissolve right in front of me, revealing the coward underneath who couldn't own his actions. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he stammered, his voice breaking as he struggled to find the words that would fix the unfixable. "But you did," I said, looking him dead in the eye, refusing to look away. "You made a choice every single day to lie to me and protect yourself at my expense." He started to cry, quiet, pathetic tears that rolled down his cheeks into his expensive wine, but I felt dry, hollowed out, and completely drained of empathy. "I don't know what I want," he admitted, looking down at his hands as if the answers were written on his palms. "I'm confused. I never wanted to lose you?" That was the sentence that broke the last fragile thread holding me to him, the final severance of our bond, the audacity of his confusion. Confusion is not love. Confusion is just a coward's convenient way of keeping his options open while hurting everyone around him to satisfy his own ego. I stood up slowly, picking up my purse and smoothing down the skirt of the dress I would never wear again, feeling the silk cool against my fingertips. "I'm not an option, Jerome," I said, my voice loud enough that the couple at the next table stopped eating and looked over in shock. "I'm the prize, and you just lost me forever." I walked out of the restaurant with my head held high, leaving him there with the unpaid bill, the unfinished wine, and the wreckage of our 2-year relationship. The cool night air hit my flushed face, crisp and sobering, And for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe oxygen instead of his lies. But the relief was short-lived, followed quickly by the crushing, suffocating weight of reality crashing down on me as I reached my car. I drove to the quiet park near the river, the place where we had our first date and shared our first kiss under the willow tree. I sat on the hood of my car under the indifferent moonlight and finally let the tears come, unleashing the dam I had built. They weren't polite cinematic tears that look pretty on camera. They were ugly, guttural sobs that shook my entire body and left me gasping for air, snot running down my face. I cried for the time I had wasted, for the trust I had given so freely, for the naive girl I was yesterday, and for the future I had imagined that was now gone forever. The next few weeks were a blur of gray days, sleepless nights, and a complete loss of the concept of time. I moved into my sister Tiana's guest room because I couldn't bear to be in our apartment surrounded by the ghosts of our memories and the silence of his absence. Depression didn't feel like sadness. It felt like having a severe flu that affected my soul, draining the color from the world. My body ached constantly, my head was heavy with brain fog, and getting out of bed felt like lifting 1,000 pounds of lead every single morning. I stopped eating regular meals, surviving on stale toast and coffee, stopped replying to texts from concerned friends, and effectively stopped functioning as a human being. My phone became my worst enemy, a source of constant pain, and yet it was my only lifeline to the world, glued to my hand. I created a fake Instagram account, a faceless profile with 0 followers, just to keep tabs on him and see if he was with her. I spent hours scrolling through Brianna's feed, analyzing every caption, every photo, looking for clues of their happiness, looking for evidence that I was easily replaced. Living my best life, she posted, with a picture of a coffee cup that I knew, with sickening certainty, Jerome had bought for her because it was from his favorite obscure cafe. I zoomed in on the background of her photos, looking for traces of him. A watch, a shoe, a shadow, torturing myself with the evidence of his new life. I compared myself to her constantly, picking apart my own appearance and personality until I felt worthless. Was she prettier than me? Was she smarter? Was she more fun to be around? Did she laugh at his jokes better than I did? It was a toxic, self-destructive loop, a spiral of self-hatred that I couldn't seem to pull myself out of, no matter how hard I tried. One night, Valerie, my best friend since college, came over unannounced, knowing I wouldn't answer the door if she called or texted. She found me sitting on the floor in the dark, surrounded by used tissues and empty takeout containers, the blue light of my phone illuminating my tear-streaked face like a ghost. She didn't say a word at first, simply taking in the scene of my devastation. She just walked over, gently took the phone out of my hand, and turned on the bedside lamp, flooding the room with warm light. The sudden light hurt my eyes, but I knew deep down that I needed it to see the truth of what I was doing to myself. "You are drinking poison and hoping he dies," Valerie said, her voice stern but laced with kindness and profound concern. "Look at yourself. You're disappearing into nothingness over a man who isn't even thinking about you." I looked down at my trembling hands, seeing how thin my wrists had become and how pale my skin looked, realizing she was right. "I just want to know if he's happy," I whispered, my voice cracking with desperation and shame. "I need to know if it was worth it." "It doesn't matter," she said, sitting down next to me on the floor and holding my hand. "His happiness is not your responsibility anymore, and his misery won't fix yours. You have to choose yourself now because he clearly didn't choose you. You are the only person who can save you." Those words echoed in my head all night long, bouncing around my empty mind like a mantra. Choose yourself. The next morning, I woke up with a headache, but also with a strange sense of clarity. It wasn't a big, dramatic declaration to the world. It was a quiet, internal resolve to survive this, to not let him win by destroying me. I opened the app and deleted the fake account I had created, erasing my window into their lives. I remember my finger hovering over the delete button, my heart racing as if I were cutting a wire on a ticking bomb, afraid of losing the connection. When the screen went black and the account was gone, I felt a strange, unfamiliar lightness in my chest, like a weight had been lifted. I called a therapist that afternoon, my hands shaking as I dialed the number I had found online days ago. The waiting room smelled like lavender and old magazines, a scent that was meant to be calming, but made me anxious about opening up to a stranger. I sat there, nervously twisting the ring on my finger, a ring I bought for myself, wondering if I was broken beyond repair or if there was still hope for me. My therapist, a woman named Dr. Evans with kind, intelligent eyes and comfortable shoes, called me in with a warm smile. "Where do you want to start?" she asked softly, opening a fresh notebook and clicking her pen. "I feel like I'm grieving someone who isn't dead," I said. And then I started crying again, the tears flowing freely for the first time in front of someone else. We talked about the relationship, but more importantly, we started talking about me and my patterns. We talked about why I settled for breadcrumbs of affection when I deserved a whole loaf, why I made excuses for his bad behavior. We talked about my deep-seated fear of abandonment, tracing it back to things I hadn't thought about in years, connecting dots I didn't know existed. Healing isn't a straight line, doctor, Evans told me, drawing a spiral in the air with her hand. It's a spiral. You might feel like you're going in circles, but you're actually moving up, seeing the same pain from a higher perspective. I started going to the gym, not to get a revenge body for him to see, but to feel something other than emotional pain, to reclaim my physical space. The first day, I felt awkward and out of place in my baggy t-shirt, surrounded by fit people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing with the machines. I ran on the treadmill until my lungs burned and my legs shook with exhaustion, pushing myself to the limit. The physical pain was grounding. It was real, it was manageable, and it was a distraction from the excruciating pain in my heart. I started taking a pottery class on Thursday nights to fill the void of our old date nights, forcing myself to be creative. There was something meditative about the wet clay, the way it felt cool and slippery in my hands as it spun on the wheel. My first few bowls were absolute disasters, lopsided and cracked, collapsing under their own weight like my emotional state. But my teacher told me gently, you have to center the clay before you can shape it into anything. If the core isn't stable, the walls will fall. I realized in that moment she wasn't just talking about pottery. She was talking about life and my recovery. I had to center myself, find my own core and stability before I could build a new life for myself or invite anyone else in. Week by week, the heavy fog of depression started to lift, revealing glimpses of sunlight and hope. I started noticing the vibrant color of the sky again, the way the leaves rustled in the wind, the smell of rain on pavement. I started laughing at jokes, real, genuine laughter that bubbled up from my stomach instead of forced giggles to be polite. I started reclaiming the parts of my city that I had avoided for months because they reminded me of him, rewriting the map of my world. I went to our favorite coffee shop alone, sat at a new table by the window, and ordered a completely different drink, one that I actually liked. I sat in the chair we used to share and read a book, creating a new memory over the old one, layer by layer, until his ghost faded. Then came the invitation to the party, a social event I wasn't sure I was ready for. It was 3 months after the breakup, and Matthew invited me to his birthday bash at a downtown bar. I almost said no, terrified of running into mutual friends, terrified of the pity I would see in their eyes, the whispers behind their hands. But Valerie dragged me out of bed and practically forced me to put on a dress and do my makeup, hyping me up in the mirror. You are not staying home to rot, she said firmly. You are young, beautiful, and free, and the world needs to see that. Walking into that crowded party felt like walking into a battlefield without any armor to protect me, my heart pounding in my throat. But then I looked around and realized nobody was looking at me with pity or judgment. They were busy living their lives. They were just happy to see me, smiling and waving, welcoming me back to the land of the living. I stood by the drinks table, sipping a soda, when a guy named Alex walked up to me with a confident smile and kind eyes. He was cute, funny, and clearly interested in getting to know me, asking questions about my life, not my breakup. We talked for an hour about movies, travel, and bad reality TV shows, laughing at the absurdity of it all. He asked for my number at the end of the night, and for a split second, I felt that old validation kick in, the thrill of being wanted. Someone wanted me. I was desirable. I was worth something. But then I listened to the quiet, wise voice inside me, the one I had ignored for so long in my past relationship. I'm flattered, really, I told him, looking him directly in the eye with a smile. But I'm not ready for anything right now. I'm focusing on myself. He looked surprised, but respectful. I get it, he said, nodding. Good for you. Honestly, that takes guts. Walking away from him felt more empowering than getting his number or going on a date ever could have. It was a victory of self-love. I realized that being alone didn't mean I was lonely or broken. It meant I was protecting my peace and valuing my own company enough to wait until I was truly ready. A week later, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number while I was studying at the library. I knew exactly who it was before I even opened the message. My body reacted before my brain did. I miss you, the text read. Just 2 simple words from Jerome, dropping into my life like a bomb. My heart hammered against my ribs, a physical reaction I couldn't control despite my progress. The trauma bond pulling tight. Old me would have analyzed this text for hours, calling Valerie, decoding the meaning, wondering if he wanted me back, if he had changed. Old me would have felt a surge of hope, a desperate desire to fix things, to be the one he eventually chose. But the new me, the one who survived the nights on the bathroom floor, felt something completely different. Annoyance. Pure, unadulterated annoyance and exhaustion. He didn't get to miss me. He lost the right to miss me when he chose her over me. When he lied to my face, I didn't reply. I didn't even block him to make a statement. I just deleted the thread, erasing his attempt to intrude. It felt like closing a heavy, dusty book that I had already finished reading and didn't enjoy, putting it back on the shelf forever. I needed a change, a big one, something to shake up my world completely and physically remove myself from his orbit. I had always dreamed of living abroad, but Jerome never wanted to leave the state or his comfort zone, so I stayed small for him. I found an internship program in Barcelona, staring at the application on my laptop screen with trembling fingers, daring myself to dream. The deadline was in exactly 24 hours. I spent the entire night writing the essay, pouring my heart and soul into the words on the screen, channeling all my pain into ambition. I wrote about resilience, about reinvention, about the hunger to see the world and find myself in a new language. Hitting submit felt like throwing a message in a bottle into the vast ocean, hoping someone would find it and offer me a lifeline. The waiting period was agonizing, but it was a different kind of waiting than waiting for a text back from a boy who didn't care. It was a hopeful waiting, a waiting filled with possibility and a future that belonged only to me. When the email finally came, I was sitting in the quiet zone of the library, refreshing my inbox for the 100th time. "Congratulations," the subject line read in bold letters. I screamed, right there in the quiet zone, startling everyone around me. I didn't care. I stood up and cheered. I ran outside and called Tiana, sobbing happy tears into the phone. "I'm going to Spain. I'm actually going." I did it. The next month was a whirlwind of packing boxes, getting visas, and saying tearful goodbyes to the people who saved me. I sold my furniture, gave away clothes I didn't need, and packed my entire life into 2 large suitcases, stripping down to the essentials. 2 days before my flight, I was cleaning out the last drawer of my nightstand when I found an envelope I didn't recognize. It had no stamp, just my name handwritten on the front. It must have been slipped under my door while I was out. I opened it, expecting a bill or a note from the landlord, but the handwriting inside made my blood run cold. It was from Brianna. My hands shook as I unfolded the letter, bracing myself for a confrontation or a gloating message about how happy they were. But the first line wasn't an insult. It was an apology. "I didn't know," the letter began. "I swear to God, I didn't know you were still together." I sat down on the floor, the world tilting on its axis as I read on, absorbing the shocking truth. Brianna wrote that Jerome had told her we broke up 3 months before she moved back to town. He had told her I was crazy and refused to move out, painting himself as the victim of a clinging ex-girlfriend. When she saw me at the park that night, the night I confronted them, she wasn't looking at me with guilt for stealing him. She was looking at me with horror because she realized in that split second that she was the other woman. She wrote that she dumped him immediately after I walked away. She left him sitting on that bench alone. She blocked his number, moved out of her temporary place, and never spoke to him again. "He lied to both of us," she wrote at the end. "You didn't lose him to a better woman. We both lost time to a liar. I hope you find peace." I put the letter down, my mind racing as the pieces of the puzzle finally clicked into place. All this time, I had felt inadequate, wondering what she had that I didn't, wondering why he chose her. But he hadn't chosen anyone. He was trying to keep both of us, playing a game where he was the only winner. The text he sent me saying I'm confused wasn't a moment of vulnerability. It was a scramble to save face because he had just been dumped by the woman he tried to cheat with. He wasn't confused. He was caught. He wasn't mourning the loss of us. He was mourning the loss of his control over the situation. A wave of pure, white-hot fury washed over me, followed immediately by a wave of hysterical laughter. I laughed until my sides hurt, sitting there on the floor of my empty apartment. I wasn't the victim of a tragic romance. I was the survivor of a con artist. And Brianna wasn't the villain. She was just another casualty in his war against the truth. This revelation didn't make me sad. It set me free in a way nothing else could have. It shattered the last lingering illusion that maybe, just maybe, our love had been special before it broke. It wasn't special. It was a lie. And now I owed him absolutely nothing, not even my grief. The day I left, I walked through the airport with my head held higher than ever before. I stopped by a trash can near the security checkpoint and pulled out the old photo of us I had saved. I looked at his face, the face I once adored, and saw only a stranger who never really existed. I didn't tear it up. That would require energy he didn't deserve. I just dropped it into the bin, watching it land on top of a half-eaten sandwich wrapper. Fitting. Sitting on the plane, waiting for takeoff, I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Jerome. "I heard you're leaving. Good luck." I looked at the screen, knowing now that he was texting me because he was alone, because Brianna had left him, because he had no one left to manipulate. I didn't feel a pang of sadness. I felt a surge of power. I didn't reply thanks. I didn't reply at all. I blocked his number. Then I went to my contacts and deleted Jerome forever. I switched my phone to airplane mode, cutting the final cord that tied me to the ground. The plane taxied down the runway, the massive engines roaring to life beneath me, shaking the frame of the aircraft. As we lifted off into the clouds, I watched the city shrink below me through the small window, becoming a patchwork of lights. The streets where we walked, the restaurant where he lied, the park where the truth came out. It all became small, insignificant, just patterns on a grid that didn't define me anymore. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the recycled air of the cabin, and it tasted like freedom. I wasn't running away from a broken heart anymore. I was flying toward a life that was 100% mine, built on truth, not lies. Barcelona was everything I imagined and more, a sensory overload of color, sound, and life. The light there was different, golden and warm, like honey poured over the city streets, melting away the cold gray of my past. My apartment was tiny, a fourth-floor walk-up with creaky floors and no elevator, but it was my sanctuary. I spent my days working hard at the design firm, struggling with my broken Spanish and laughing at my own mistakes without fear of judgment. I made new friends who didn't know Jerome, who didn't know my history or my heartbreak. To them, I was just the ambitious, fun American girl with the infectious laugh and bright ideas, and I began to believe them. I spent my weekends exploring the Gothic Quarter, getting lost in the winding streets, eating tapas alone, and loving the solitude. One evening, 6 months later, I was standing on my tiny balcony, looking out at the city as the church bells rang. The sun was setting, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of violet, orange, and pink. A masterpiece just for me. I had a glass of Spanish wine in my hand, and the sounds of the bustling city drifted up to me. Laughter, music, life. I thought about the girl who sat in the dark car at 2 a.m., thinking her life was over because a boy didn't love her. I thought about the letter from Brianna, and the realization that saved me from a lifetime of wondering what if. I wished I could go back and hug that girl, hold her tight, and tell her that the worst moment of her life was actually the best thing that ever happened to her. Because if he hadn't cheated, if he hadn't lied, I would still be stuck in that small town, living a small life with a small man. I realized in that moment that I hadn't just gotten over Jerome. I had transcended him. He was a lesson, a painful, necessary lesson in self-worth, and I had passed the final exam. I took a sip of wine, tasting the oak and the fruit, feeling the cool evening breeze on my skin, feeling alive in every cell of my body. My phone sat on the table inside, playing upbeat music, no longer a device for waiting. I looked out at the horizon, where the glistening sea met the colorful sky, infinite and open. I was alone, thousands of miles from home, in a city where I barely spoke the language, and I had never felt more at home. The paralyzing fear of being alone had vanished, replaced by the deep, unshakable joy of being with myself. I smiled, raising my glass to the sunset in a silent toast to the women we become after the fire. Here's to you, I whispered to the empty air, and to Brianna wherever she was. Here's to the truth! And here's to finally, truly choosing yourself. The night deepened, the streetlights flickering on one by one below me like stars on the ground, illuminating my path forward. I stayed out there for a long time, just breathing, just existing in the moment, savoring the peace I had fought so hard for. I knew there would be hard days ahead, challenges I couldn't foresee, mountains I'd have to climb. I knew there would be other heartbreaks, other failures, other disappointments, because that is life. But I also knew, with absolute certainty, that I would survive them all, because I had already survived the betrayal, the lies, and the despair, and I came out stronger, sharper, and more alive. I had lost the person I thought was my everything, and I found out that I was my own everything all along, and that realization was worth every single tear, every sleepless night, every moment of pain. I finished my wine, turned back toward the warm, inviting light of my apartment, and stepped inside, into my new life. I closed the balcony door, shutting out the noise of the world, and turned up the music. I started to dance in my living room, moving to a rhythm only I could hear, feeling the music in my bones, wild and free. I was free, I was happy, and I was just getting started. The end?